Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we're looking at the approval of the agenda. Do we have any proposed amendments to tonight's published agenda? And may I hear a motion to approve?
Chair, I move to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
Okay, so we have an approval, a motion by Councilman Clausen and a second by Councilman Trineri. Did I get that right? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. We move on to citizens' comments. This next item on the agenda is our first public comment period. This public comment period is limited to items on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. As a reminder, people making comments need to be respectful, no inappropriate language, or no personal attacks. This is for public comments and is not a Q&A session. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council, please raise your hand and be acknowledged, and the city clerk will bring you over as a panelist so you can address the council. If you're joining us via telephone, press *9 to raise your hand.
Mayor Pro Tem, I would just remind that if anyone's here for the public hearings, that they would be able to address at that point for those individual items.
Thank you for the reminder.
Hi,
Do we
Mayor
have
Pro Tem? No one has raised their hand at this time to speak for
Okay.
citizen comments.
Great, then we move on to the consent agenda. Do we have any proposed amendments to tonight's consent agenda?
Madam
No?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, with the motion by Councilman Diener and a second by Councilman Rosapepe or Chang. It's so hard to keep track of that second one. We move forward. Are there any questions or comments? All in favor? Please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. Tonight we have no presentations, but we have 4 public hearings. The first public hearing is on McCormick Woods Phases 3, 4, and 5 preliminary plats for the extension of term and revisions to vested development standards. Director Bond will move forward with this one.
All right. Before we open the public hearing, I'll give a brief overview of what this hearing is about. Before the City Council tonight for public hearing is a proposed amendment to a development agreement between the city and McCormick Communities LLC concerning McCormick Woods Phases 3, 4, and 5 preliminary plats. And that old development agreement was recorded on September 16, 2013. McCormick is seeking an extension of the term of the existing agreement. They are seeking to extend certain vested rights under the existing agreement, but are waiving other vested rights. And they are they've agreed to update their road standards to bring their what was allowed under the old development agreement more in line with the city's current adopted road standards for future phases. And they are asking for a 20-year term for the amended agreement that will allow them 20 years to essentially build out these old portions of McCormick Woods. There is one provision in the agreement that is new and really seeks to clarify something that wasn't addressed previously, and that is a required park along St. Andrews Drive near the southern entrance to McCormick Woods off of Glenwood. McCormick Communities is required under the preliminary plat to build a small park serving that neighborhood. And we wanted to clarify the timing and location of that park facility. And so you'll see in the packet that there is a concept plan for that park facility. To date, we have not received, to my knowledge, any comments on this unless they were sent directly to the city council or the clerk's office. And so the staff recommendation at this time is just to hold the public hearing, and then we'll be bringing this forward for final action on the 24th of May, if all goes well.
Okay, With that, I open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to address this issue?
Mayor Pro Tem, no one has yet raised their hand to speak to this public hearing.
Okay. With that, I close this public hearing and we move on to the second public hearing on an ordinance adopting Port Orchard Municipal Code, Chapter 20.70, Wireless Communication Facilities, Port Orchard Municipal Code, Chapter 20.72, Small Cell Wireless Communication Facilities, and amending Port Orchard Municipal Code, Section 20.39.270. Director Bond?
Yes, thank you. And before we jump into this hearing, I wanted to point out that on the business items portion of tonight's agenda are two items. I believe it's 7A and 7B dealing with this issue. When we had originally brought this forward, it was all one package. And so there's a single hearing, but it covers both of those business items.
Thank you.
Before the city council tonight are two ordinances, one creating a Port Orchard Municipal Code Section 20.70 for wireless communication facilities, and also amending the land use table for consistency under 20.39270. The second ordinance deals with small cell wireless facilities and is under a proposed chapter 20.72. And both of these deal with the standards for design and aesthetics associated with our cell phone antennas and small cell type antennas. The Planning Commission has previously held a public hearing on this item, and because of the desire on this issue was to bring this to the city council on a fast track. And the Planning Commission heard some testimony from a variety of representatives of the wireless industry and said that the city council should, they recommended approval, but asked that the city council consider the comments that were received by members of that industry and also that were discussed at the land use committee at our last land use committee meeting. And so I believe at this point, the city has worked through the majority of the issues raised by the industry. And of course, there could be new issues raised tonight that we haven't seen before. And really we're down to just a handful of items. In my staff report, I listed 4 items, bullets 1 through 4. The first of those is that they are seeking additional height for utility pole co-located facilities. And so when cell phone antennas are mounted to an existing utility pole, they would like to be able to be 25 feet above the maximum pole height of 50 feet. So that they have adequate separation from the power lines, depending on the voltage of power lines that might be on any of those poles. And so the ordinance as written only allows 15 feet above power lines. So that's one item where there's a request from the industry, and that is not currently in the recommended ordinance, but council could certainly discuss it and make changes. The city has addressed 2 concerns raised by the industry. One of them was how we conceal building mounted antennas. And I believe that we have done what the industry has asked on that particular issue, as well as for there was a section that the industry had pointed out was inconsistent with federal law, and we have corrected that particular section. Finally, the industry in their comments also requested some clarifying language under bullet 4 of the staff report, which I believe that correction has been made. And so with that, the recommendation tonight is to move forward with the public hearing and then ultimately to adopt these ordinances. And I'll, as a side note, I just wanted to highlight for the city council that I received a whole lot of calls from the public and from several of you last fall when there was a new wireless communication antenna going up on Glenwood Road. It was a galvanized steel truss type structure that was, I think, about 200 feet tall. And that was permitted by conditional use permit. And of course, nobody showed up to comment on the facility or what it looked like or how it might impact them at that time. But then, of course, when it started being constructed, we heard about it. And so really the goal here is to actually put standards in our code to ensure that these facilities, when they go in the future, are of a reasonable height such that they provide good service while also balancing aesthetic concerns and making sure that Port Orchard remains an attractive community. So the recommendation here is to conduct the public hearing at this time, and then we'll move on in the business items on action on the ordinances.
Great, thank you. With that, I open the public hearing, adopting Port Orchard Municipal Code 20.7 wireless communication facilities, Municipal Code 20.72 small cell wireless communication facilities, and amending Port Orchard Municipal Code Section 20.39.270. Do we have anyone willing to comment?
Hi, Mayor Pro Tem. We do have one person, Kim Allen, who has raised her hand.
Okay.
I will allow her to speak, so just give me a moment and.
Thank
Okay, Kim should be, you should be good to go.
Ms. Ellen, would you care to comment? Are you still here? Janine, I don't, oh, there she is. Go ahead, Miss Allen.
Mute. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, very good. My name is Kim Allen. I am with the Wireless Policy Group, and I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of Verizon Wireless. I want to begin by thanking the staff for such careful and complicated work on an ordinance that dives into a lot of technical details far more than what planning departments are typically used to. They've been very open to feedback and comments from the industry, because our goal is to have a very workable ordinance so that we can deploy small wireless facilities and macro facilities in Port Orchard to meet the ever exploding demand on our network because of the increased use of the wireless network and multiple devices. So we really have worked through almost all of our issues. I think Director Bond spoke to one of them, which is the utility pole co-location. At present, it says that we could only raise the height of an existing utility pole by 15 feet in section 20.70.120. This is page 129 of your packet. And we're requesting that that be raised an additional 10 feet to 25 feet. Typically, also in this particular section, there's a 50-foot height restriction total. And so really, if the number remains at 15 feet, that we can raise the height of an existing pole by 15 feet. Any pole taller than 35 feet would really be eliminated from consideration. Utility poles are existing infrastructure. We don't have to build a separate tower to be able to deploy. So it's attractive for many municipalities to allow siting both macro facilities and small wireless facilities on this existing utility pole infrastructure. But we do have to separate from the energized lines. And so we also have to get above a lot of the tree cover and the buildings themselves to be able to get a clear line of sight. So we're asking that the 50-foot total height restriction in section 20.70.120 be removed, and that the allowed height above the existing pole height be 25 feet. Additionally, I think it's also highlighted in the staff report in section 20.70.170. There's a section that deals with height waivers, and these are the occasions where we might need to have even more height additionally, and it lists a number of circumstances under which staff could grant a waiver of a height cap if it was shown to be necessary, or it was shown to be beneficial to the community. And oftentimes the wireless industry will seek to have a waiver of height or another standard, because if the standard would be enforced, we would be unable to deploy, and we would be effectively prohibited from building out our network. And so we're asking that some language be added to the height waiver section right at the end of the first sentence, and which would read, or the regulations have the effect of prohibiting service under the 1996 Telecommunications Act. Typically, that would form another separate basis for us to be able to seek a height waiver. But with that, we really have worked through all of the remaining issues. We think that the code that Port Orchard is adopting is is robust in protecting community values. I care about that because I live just south on Banner Road, just south of Port Orchard. So I spend a great deal of time in the city. So I think that the aesthetic protections are very good, but we also need to have the practicality of being able to deploy and build the network out as well. So we think that with the 2 additions that we've requested, that we could strike that balance, and we ask the council to make those 2 changes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other people that would like to comment tonight? Ms. Floyd?
Mayor Pro Tem, this is Clerk Wallace, and yes, there's a couple more people that have raised their hands, and I'm going to go ahead and call Meredith
Okay, thank you.
to speak.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. My name is Meredith Pabst of Wireless Policy Group, and I'm commenting on behalf of AT&T. I sent a letter about 10 days ago outlining AT&T's remaining issues for council's further consideration, as well as a red line, and I know that's in your packet. I would like to also express AT&T's thanks and appreciation for staff throughout this process. We found at the Planning Commission that the code change was on sort of a fast track, and really appreciated both Mr. Bond and Mr. Fisk's responsiveness in setting up a meeting so we could talk through some issues and resolve a number of industry concerns. Similar to Ms. Allen, I just have a couple final points and clarifications. I did want to echo Kim's comments on the utility pole height for co-locations, and this is something I addressed in the letter on behalf of AT&T as well. And I'll just note that the city's citing preferences state that utility pole co-locations are a preferred method of siting, and by increasing the height allowed for a macro to attach to the utility pole, that will help that preference be fulfilled. As it is, it's extremely unlikely that a carrier can use an existing utility pole given the strict height limitations. I had one clarification with regard to concealed building mounted antennas. I have a redlined change to that on page 81 of your packet. And this would simply resolve a potential conflict between what would be a required 10-foot rooftop setback and the allowed concealment, which might be in a church steeple or a faux chimney. I'm just asking that in instances where it would make sense for architectural integrity, that the 10-foot rooftop setback not apply. And again, we're talking about antennas that would be fully concealed within a faux part of the structure. So visual impact shouldn't be a significant concern in that case. On the height waiver question, I was gonna speak to that as well. I do have a suggested red line, very similar to Ms. Allen's on pages 85 and 86 of your packet. And again, it would sync up your height waiver section with federal law. And finally, just one suggested clarification for the use table and citing preferences. And this is pages 75 and 76 of your packet. The highest preference on, or I guess it's listed as a highest priority for citing on page 76, subsection C1, is attachments to existing or replacement structures. And then it lists a number of structures, including water towers. And then it's a such as list. So it includes unnamed structures as well. And when you compare that with the table on the immediately preceding page, which is 75, that more restrictively lists only utility poles and buildings as supporting structures. So AT&T just suggests to avoid confusion in implementing the code and make it clear to both staff and the consultants that carriers hire to prepare applications to submit to the local jurisdiction. It would be helpful for the table to be consistent with the preferences and list water towers. And we suggest also listing ball field lights and other structures. And again, I'm showing that in the red line on page 75 of your packet. I really appreciate your attention tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Are there any questions, Council? Councilman Clausen, you have your hand raised? No? No, okay.
All right, thank you.
It's not, thank you. Okay. Ms. Wallace, are there any others that care to comment?
Yes, Robin, I will allow her to them to speak in just a moment.
Thank you. Ms. Rahman, would you care to comment? You're muted. Robin, you're muted. Down in the lower section of the screen, there's a little icon that you can hit to unmute yourself. Ms. Wallace, is there anyone else? Ms. Robin remains muted.
At this time, I do not see any other hands raised.
Ms. Robin? Okay. All right. With that, I'm going to close the second public hearing. And we're moving on to our third public hearing, which is McCormick West Development Agreement for the extension of term and revisions to vested development standards. I open the public hearing.
Would you like me to present first?
I would love that. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. So before you is a very similar agreement, development agreement to our first public hearing item tonight, except that it deals with McCormick West instead of McCormick Woods. It also deals with extending certain vested rights going forward for a period of 20 years. It updates the adopted roadway section. The developer does agree to comply with new stormwater drainage regulations, and it removes references to some code sections that no longer exist. Unlike the McCormick Woods agreement, it doesn't deal with any park facilities and proposes a term of 20 years. We have not received any comments on this proposed development agreement. And again, we would propose to bring this to you for action on the 24th of May. And our recommendation tonight is just to conduct the public hearing.
Okay, great. Thank you. With that, I open the third public hearing. Would anyone care to comment on the McCormick West Development Agreement? Do we have anyone, Ms. Wallace?
At this time, I do not see any hands raised.
Okay. With that, we close the third public hearing. The fourth public hearing is on Haven Townhomes Development Agreement for Transportation Impact Fee Credits. Director Bond?
Yes, this is our last public hearing tonight on a development agreement, and this one deals with the Haven Townhomes project, which is proposed to be located on Southwest Sydney Avenue, Sydney Road Southwest at the intersection of Glenwood Road, right next to Sydney Glen Elementary School. The developer in this case is proposing to build 114 townhome units of housing. And this is right across the street from the other project that the same developer is currently building, which is the Haven Apartments project. The Haven Apartments project was proposing to build half-street improvements on the east side of the Sydney Road Southwest right-of-way, and the Haven Townhomes project is building frontage improvements on the west side of the roadway. Because this project is part of our transportation impact fee calculation, we are obligated to provide impact fee credits for the project. And so they have requested those credits in a development agreement, and they are proposing to build a travel lane, bike lane, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, street lighting, landscape strip, and crosswalks, including curb ramps. And so this is the required public hearing for the development agreement. And this is on the agenda tonight for action as a business item as well. And staff will be recommending approval of the agreement this evening. For now, though, we are recommending just that the public hearing be held, and then we'll get to the business item later in our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I open the fourth public hearing on Haven Townhomes Development Agreement for Transportation Impact Fee Credits. Is there anyone here to comment on this?
Mayor Pro Tem, I see one person's hand raised at this time. It's Brianne, and I'll bring that person over in just a moment.
Thank you so much. Hello, Miss Kelsey. Would you care to comment?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and staff. Brianne Kelsey, Senior Director of Development with Tarragon. I am speaking on behalf of the applicant for Sydney Road Townhomes LLC, which is more commonly known as Nick shared as Haven Townhomes. I want to begin by thanking staff and truly appreciate the attention of staff, directors, and council in expeditiously moving forward with this item before you this evening. If I can take just a brief moment, offer a couple of highlights for you on the project, giving you a bit more depth on this exciting new neighborhood and community that we have underway right now. As mentioned, Haven Townhomes is 114 units combined of 2 and 3 bedroom townhome community that is truly expected to meet an unmet market offering on a for rent product that lives and breathes a bit like a single family home by offering on-site amenities as well. And without the cost and maintenance of an operational upkeep of a typical single family home. The community is centered around about 8,000 square foot central park and includes an amenity building with gathering spaces, both indoor and outdoor for residents and their guests. We also have planned additional amenities such as an outdoor covered hot tub, on-site leasing, maintenance facilities, playground, dog parks, community garden, and walking paths. And as mentioned, it is located immediately across Sydney Road from our current community, which is apartments under construction with planned deliveries for this fall of 2022. Haven Townhomes, we're hoping to start work on site this summer with the first few townhomes, and the buildings and the amenity buildings would be opened up by the middle of 2023. And this project does require significant regional improvements to Sydney Road by building out the additional frontage along the opposite side of the apartment site. That benefits not only the project, but also helps to serve to improve the street-state corridor, the pedestrian experience as envisioned, I think, and planned along Sydney Road. As we are funding and building the traffic improvements, we're also improving the neighborhood while meeting the expectations and goals as set forth in this neighborhood, which is called Ruby Creek. And while the overall cost of improvements to construction will actually be more than the underlying impact fees, we feel that the development agreement before you today represents a very positive fiscal arrangement in advancing forward the design, construction, and funding of transportation improvements to the benefit of the community today. And as such, we are in support of the development agreement as presented before you, and kindly thank staff for all their efforts today.
Thank you, Ms. Kelsey. Is there anyone else that would care to comment? Ms. Wallace?
At this time, I see no other hands raised.
All right. With that, I close the fourth hearing. Now we're moving on to our business items. The first item is adoption of an ordinance adopting Port Orchard Municipal Code Chapter 20.70 wireless communication facilities. Mr. Bond?
Yes, this is one of 2 ordinances covered by the hearing earlier tonight on wireless communication facilities and small cell, the proposed small cell chapter. The wireless communication facilities chapter deals with the non-small cell communication facilities. And this is the section of code that is proposed that included the most comments from the wireless industry. So the proposed height change above existing power lines and a couple of the other comments that were highlighted by the industry are included on this particular chapter 20.70. This ordinance also has the effect of amending the land use table, as I mentioned, in 20.39, just to make sure that the terminology in our land use table matches the terminology of 20.70 and 20.72 of the proposed codes. The staff recommendation on this ordinance is to discuss the 25-foot height above the city's existing utility pole issue, but ultimately to approve the proposed ordinance otherwise as presented. And if city council has any questions about the comments that were made or would like feedback or input from city staff or the city attorney as to why we're recommending moving forward with things as is, we are happy to answer those questions.
Thank you. Council, do we have a motion? Councilman Diener? You're muted.
Of course, thank you. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt an ordinance adopting chapter Port Orchard Municipal Code 20.70 wireless communication facilities.
Second.
Second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
The first thing,
Oh, go ahead.
the first thing that I wanted to talk about was what may have been a technical difficulty in trying to get public comment. And so I'm wondering if we should talk about leaving this open until the next regular meeting.
We had a technical difficulty. Okay.
I believe so. I think it was a Robin who was unable to comment.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So you would like to table it?
To continue it to the next
To
regular meeting.
continue?
I mean, to continue forward with our discussion, but to allow Robin, who I don't see on anymore, to provide additional comments if that person had any, to the city council.
Council members, anyone else care to go along with that? What is your pleasure?
And I guess the follow-on question is for Nick, is it important that this be adopted tonight or could 2 weeks suffice?
Well, I would say that it is important in the sense that there is one pending application for a conditional use permit for a wireless communication facility. And so the sooner this ordinance is in place, the more likely you are to head off any issues of vesting under the building code. So if it takes effect tonight and becomes effective in 5 days, the code is in effect. If they were to apply for a building permit while they're waiting for their CUP, it is possible that they could beat the clock, so to say.
Well, what is the nature of that application? Is it a full tower?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Council? What is your?
And I was going to say that application just came in, I think, within the last 2 weeks. So our work on this preceded that application.
Has that application been taken in as a counter complete, essentially?
I'm not sure. I just returned yesterday from 10 days vacation, so I'm still getting back on track. And I would suggest potentially Jennifer Robertson is here as the acting as counsel for the city, and perhaps she has some input on the opportunities that the individual Robin had for public comment. I would just point out that this is the second public hearing. We also had a public hearing at the Planning Commission, and there was an opportunity to provide written comment as well. But perhaps Ms. Robinson has additional input.
Ms. Robinson, would you care to comment?
Certainly, that means I can get my camera turned on. There it goes.
Thank you.
So yeah, there was not a requirement to hold another public hearing tonight on this. The staff wanted to do so because it did change a little bit, and the Planning Commission's direction was not on 100% finished code, but it was close enough to what they held the public hearing on that it wasn't legally necessary. So it's really up to the council's call if you want to hold it open for longer. It certainly is not a legal issue because, like I said, this is just an extra public hearing that was not required under the Growth Management Act.
Thank you. Councilman Rosa Pepe?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Nick, would you like to elaborate a little bit more on the request for the 25-foot increase over the telephone pole? And on a separate note, I'd be comfortable moving forward with this, a vote on this tonight.
Sure. So I'm going to scroll to the section right now. I've got to find the correct page, but there is a section in 20.70, the proposed code, that deals with the co-location of wireless communication facilities on existing towers. I believe it's 20.70. Let's see here.
120, Nick.
120. Thank you. And right now, the way that 20.70120 is written, it says the height of a utility pole co-location is limited to 15 feet above the replaced utility pole. And what they're saying is they would like to be able to put it 25 feet above the height of the replaced utility pole and not greater than 65 total feet in height. And so, you know, it's a 10-foot difference. And, you know, I suppose it with the number of transmission lines that we have running along main corridors in our city, it's potentially a problem in terms of how far the electrical codes require those antennas to be separated from power lines. And so it potentially takes significant stretches of overhead power lines off the table for utility co-location. So I think there's a technical argument for doing it, but there's also the aesthetic concern of having larger antennas sticking out above existing power lines, especially when we're also trying to underground power lines in certain parts of the city.
Councilman Diener?
Just to carry on this conversation a little bit more, could you characterize the size of the macro co-locates? I know that when we talk about the smaller whip antennas and those kinds of things, that might be different, but can you characterize the size of the macros?
Nick, you're muted.
Sorry about that. If the clerks can give me permission to share my screen, I will show you one that is on Bethel Avenue right now. This one is just south of Lund. And
You should be able to share, Nick. Yeah.
there we go. So this is just south of Puerto Vallarta on the west side of the road. And this is a macro antenna on an existing pole that appears to be a transmission pole. And so I would guess that this is probably 25 feet above the existing power lines. And the new code that we're adopting obviously requires better concealment of the equipment at the base of the pole, but that's potentially the size of something that you're looking at. Although this was just a taller wood pole to begin with, I think in some cases they're talking about extensions of on existing poles, so it could look a little bit different.
Sure.
Is there anyone? Go ahead.
And I'll just share that, you know, I think a lot of what concerns people about cell tower code and small cell code is that it's a visual impact. But I think when you're talking about extending it just an additional 10 feet and the nature of what you're looking at anyways, I don't see any harm in accommodating that request.
Anyone else care to comment? Go ahead, Councilmember Clausen.
Well, I kind of agree with Scott because I think about, you know, what's the alternative? Build a separate pole or tower. I would prefer them to mount them on an existing pole versus put a separate structure.
Okay. Anyone else care to comment?
I had a comment. Oh, go ahead, Jay.
No, I was just going to ask the Mayor Pro Tem and Nick that essentially then we would need to modify what we're voting on. And I think that Scott, you would have to do that.
Sure.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. And I think that if you look at page 82 of your packet, that is where Meredith Pabst included suggested language. And I think I think that language would be suitable if you wanted to suggest that we adopt her suggested language for 20.70.1201. And so I believe you can make a motion and then vote on that motion and come back to the original.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I make a motion that section 20.70.1201 read height. The height of a utility pole location limited to 25 feet above the replaced utility pole and may not be greater than 60 feet in height in residential zones.
And that was 65 feet in height, I believe.
65, sorry. Thank you for that. 65.
Okay, do we have
Legally, it
second?
has to be a motion to amend. It's not a separate motion.
It's a separate, yeah, it's a
Motion to amend.
Okay, and a second on that?
Yes.
Second that.
Okay, so we're moving forward with an amended motion. Is there any further discussion on the amended motion? Okay, all in favor of the amended motion, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. The amended motion passes. We're moving on to business item B.
Well,
Madam
were
Mayor
there,
Pro Tem, I think we have to vote on the amended motion now.
well,
Oh,
and just a quick clarification with Nick, were there other elements? It sounded like there was at least one or other element that the working group wanted to talk about changing in the ordinance. Am I correct there? Or was it
Yes,
just this one?
yeah, there were a few additional comments. And I believe from the staff standpoint, I'm comfortable with the proposed language as it is. I am not recommending that we change those, but you're certainly free to discuss the comments that have been received and potentially make additional motions to change the draft language.
so where are we at with this? Are we, Councilman Chicardi?
Just a point of clarification, and maybe Jennifer can chime in. I just want to make sure we're doing things in order here. Typically, we'll vote on an amendment, which then gets us back to the main motion. Or did we really try to take the main motion and amend that main motion? I just want to make sure we're not missing something. I felt like we may have skipped a step in that last progression of discussion.
Mayor Pro Tem, may I respond?
Yes, oh, please.
Okay. So actually, council member, we're right on track. So what's on the table right now is the motion to adopt the ordinance that is chapter 20.70 as amended. If you wanted to make additional motions to amend, those would be in order now. So you take up amendments first, and then you would eventually vote on the main motion to adopt the ordinance as amended.
Exactly.
So if additional
Thank you.
amendments are offered, those would be voted on first. If there will not be any additional amendments offered, then you would just vote on the main motion to pass that ordinance, at which point Mr. Bond will tee you up for the ordinance adopted in chapter 20.
And I think what added confusion was the fact that we were saying we were amending the motion versus just making an amendment. So
Yeah, the motion is to adopt the ordinance. The
Yep.
amendment was to amend the
Correct.
ordinance. Yes.
So we've already voted on the amendment.
correct.
We're back to the main motion.
As amended, yes.
Yes, so all in favor of the main motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the main motion passes as amended. All right, on to item B, business item B, adoption of an ordinance adopting Port Orchard Municipal Code, Chapter 20.72, small cell wireless communication facilities, and amending Port Orchard Municipal Code, Section 20.39.270. Director Bond?
Yes, thank you. So before you tonight is the second ordinance that was discussed in our second public hearing of this evening. It is the proposed chapter 20.72 concerning small cell wireless communication facilities. And this chapter, we did not receive specific comments requesting amendments. And so the staff recommendation on the small cell chapter specifically is to approve it as presented.
Right, do we have a motion? Councilman Chang.
I move to adopt an ordinance adopting chapter Port Orchard Municipal Code 2070 wireless communication facilities.
And a second?
Second.
With that, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing that there's no discussion, we're going to vote on the item. Business item 7B, adoption of this ordinance adopting Port Orchard Municipal Code, Chapter 20.72, small cell wireless communication facilities, and amending Port Orchard Municipal Code, Section 20.39.270. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. That moves us on to business item 7C. Adoption of an ordinance approving a development agreement for the Haven Townhomes project for transportation impact fee credits. Again, Director Bond, please.
Thank you. The city has negotiated a development agreement for transportation impact fee credits with Sydney Road Townhomes LLC. This agreement, if approved, would provide transportation impact fee credits to the developer in exchange for the developer designing, constructing, and funding transportation improvements within and near the Haven Townhomes development located at 4801 Glenwood Road Southwest. And just as a note, these townhomes are more along Sydney Road Southwest, but the existing house was addressed off of Glenwood, which is why you see the Glenwood address. The Haven Townhomes development consists of approximately 114 multifamily dwellings across 20 townhome style buildings, a residential amenity facility, off-street parking for approximately 305 vehicles, landscaping, and associated site improvements normal and expected to multifamily residential development. The proposal is currently under review with applicable Port Orchard Municipal Code requirements and Public Works engineering standards and specifications. The city's SEPA responsible official is issued an MD&S for the development on March 11, 2022. The transportation improvements described in the development agreement include one half of the widened Sydney Avenue Southwest from Glenwood Road to just north of Ruby Creek, including travel lane, bike lanes, curb, gutter, sidewalk, street lighting, landscape strip, and a crosswalk, including curb ramps. Port Orchard Municipal Code Section 20.26 Development Agreements outlines the process for development agreement approval. Developers seeking development agreements must submit an application. In this case, the application for the development agreement was filed on April 13, 2022. The proposed development agreement is related to the Haven Townhomes Land Disturbing Activity Permit. If the ordinance for the development agreement is approved subsequent to the public hearing, the developer would be eligible to receive transportation impact fee credits associated with the development. The developer is required to pay transportation impact fees of $315,941, which represents the maximum credit that they would be allowed. Though the development agreement does clarify that if the impact fee calculation is revised, that number could change such that their maximum credit is equal to the amount of impact fees that are owed on the project. And as the applicant mentioned, this project is expected to cost considerably more than the amount of impact fees owed. And so in all likelihood, they are going to max out their credit. So the staff recommendation tonight is for approval of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a development agreement with Sydney Road Townhomes LLC.
Okay, do we have a motion? Councilman Rosapepe.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a development agreement with Sydney Road Townhomes LLC as presented.
And second, is there any discussion? Councilman Chicardi.
Just a quick question for Mr. Bond. What's anticipated timeline of this first, so the improvements versus, I guess, when the actual credit would become applicable, kind of, does that make sense? The timing of the pulling of permits?
So my understanding is that they will be pulling the first building permits this summer. I think they're going to pull probably 3 or 4 at a time. And one of the things that the agreement does is it locks them into the impact fee rate through February 28th of next year, which is when we have our next CPI adjustment for impact fees. And in terms of the project, the timing of when they're actually going to build the improvements, I'm guessing that the improvements will get constructed somewhere in the middle of site development. And I would expect, because they're also building the apartments across the street, they're probably going to coordinate this project so that they're building the entire roadway project at once. I haven't confirmed that with the applicant, but that's sort of what I would expect in this case. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so the improvements would be made prior to any CO?
Yes, the improvements would be made prior to any CO, although if we get to the point where the improvements are mostly complete, it's possible that TCOs are an option that we would look at. But I would expect that this is mostly complete by that time, especially because the project across the street will be totally finished.
Great, thank you for that.
And they are placing a performance bond in place to cover their impact fees, and so that bond gets released once we have certified project costs and can confirm that they did in fact spend enough money to receive the maximum credit.
Thank you.
Councilman Rosa Pepe?
Thank you. I just wanted to, for the public, just a notice that, this is another example of building infrastructure concurrent with growth. So we're able to do this by working with developers so the infrastructure is in place and not having to delay growth as the waiting for the impact fees to come in. So this is a good deal. And again, thanks to staff for getting this done.
Are there any other comments? With that, all in favor of this motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. We move on to adoption of an ordinance approving a grant agreement with the state of Washington, TIB, for improvements to Pottery Road. Director Dorsey.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. The city was nominated for a Transportation Improvement Board Complete Streets Program Award by the Kitsap Public Health District. On March 25th, the city was officially notified that it was awarded funding for proposed work on Pottery Road. On April 20th, 2022, the city was notified that the work plan was accepted. The amount of the award would be $650,000, and we were provided with a grant agreement. A summary of the terms and conditions are as follows. The max grant amount, $650,000. The time of performance, 6/1/2022 through 3/25/2025. And the funding source is Transportation Improvement Board Complete Streets. By this action, the council would authorize the acceptance of the grant funding. Project expenditures will be submitted for separate council approval in accordance with the city's procurement policies. Staff recommends that the city council adopt an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a contract, TIB C-W-153001-1, with the Washington State Transportation Improvement Board for the Pottery Road non-motorized improvement in the grant amount of $650,000.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with the State of Washington Transportation Improvement Board for the Pottery Road non-motorized improvement in the grant amount of $650,000.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Great. With a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Councilman Diener.
First, I wanted to thank staff for this. I think every little transportation project improvement helps. And I was hoping that Mr. Dorsey could briefly go over the scope of what we're talking about with this improvement.
I've been out with hip surgery, so there have been a million emails back and forth on a multitude of grants. So I think that either Nick or Noah, I think it may be parlayed with the Complete Streets and maybe a road diet program from Lippert down to SR 16. I believe that's what it is. But Nick, can you elaborate?
Yeah, I think that's mostly right. I believe it's going even further north and tying into our Tremont improvements and filling in some of the gaps north of Lippert as well. But this is not my project, and I don't know whether the scope has changed, but at least that's what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, my recollection of this from Transportation Improvement Committee meetings a while ago is that this would include pedestrian improvements to Tremont as well.
Right. I think that project that we have from Sunset to South Kitsap Boulevard is still a separate project. I think we're really picking up at South Kitsap Boulevard with this project and going all the way to 16. And it includes pedestrian improvements, continuum, and again, the road diet there in front of Cedar Heights. But I think that other project, that it's a city project, because it has to do with water and sewer improvements on both sides of the road, I still think that's a separate project.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councilman Chang.
Hi, yes, I have a technical question for the city attorney. I've looked at the paperwork for this and it does not mention the Department of Transportation. So I believe that I am in the clear to vote on this. I guess my question is, I don't know if it would be appropriate me for being a DOT employee to sponsor something if there's any question of DOT being involved in the Transportation Improvement Board. And from Mark's body language, it sounds like they're two completely separate agencies. Okay, I just want to clarify that.
Any other discussion? With that, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. We move on with business item E. Adoption of an ordinance approving a contract with the Washington State Department of Transportation for the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway West Situational Study. Again, Director Dorsey, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. And Fred, you will have the opportunity to recuse yourself on this one. On April 24th, 2018, and as a requirement of the Puget Sound Regional Council, Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council, countywide application process, the Port Orchard City Council adopted resolution number 020-18, which was in support of the 2019-2022 federal funding cycle application for the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway West Situational Study. On October 31st, 2018, the city was officially notified by PSRC that the city was successful in obtaining a $490,000 grant award with a summary of the terms and conditions as follows. $490,000 is the max grant. Time of performance is 2050. Funding source is FHWA STPUL 9918 (021). So that's Federal Highway Administration funding, federal funding. And we do have a 13.5% local match requirement of just $76,474. Again, by this action, the council would authorize the acceptance of the grant funding. Project expenditure will be submitted for separate council approval in accordance with the city's policies. Staff recommends that the city council adopt ordinance number 009-22, thereby authorizing the mayor to execute contract number C044-22, which is WashDOT Local Agency Agreement number 10296 with the Washington State Department of Transportation for the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway West Situational Study in the grant amount of $490,000.
Councilman Clausen.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt an ordinance number 009-22, authorizing the mayor to execute contract number C044-22 with the Washington State Department of Transportation for the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway West Situational Study in the grant amount of $490,000.
Second.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Question?
Yes.
In your description, Mark, you indicated the time of performance 2050. is that the year 2050 or is that,
Yeah, that's just the year that was listed in the agreement. Now, once we've obligated the funding, typically you have a 10-year window to complete. I think because this is a situational study, it may it may have different criteria, but we're not going to 2050. I can guarantee you we'll have this thing done and wrapped up within the next 2 years. So,
well, if you do, you're going to be doing it by yourself because I won't be here. So,
well, again, it's a
Councilman-
situation. It's a situational study. It's not an actual project. So, but yeah, I'm not here in 2050 either. I will be probably in some other universe.
Councilman Diener.
I just wanted to say that I'm excited about projects like these. I think they really help round out a community, and the city, I think, is right to expect that these kinds of developments and amenities do occur, and that someday people, children, essentially, and adults alike, will be able to bike safely from McCormick's to downtown or run or whatever they want. So I look forward to the day when this thing is paved.
Yeah, and as an addition, remember that the plan is that there are projects that do pedestrianized improvements from McCormick, down Old Clifton, and then we have the Tremont bike lanes and sidewalks, and then this picks up from Port Orchard Boulevard and Tremont all the way to the Foot Ferry. So you're right, there's a continuum, and actually somebody could go from McCormick all the way to Annapolis someday.
Yeah, right.
Too bad that has to be someday because it sounds wonderful. All right. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Councilman Chang.
I just need to state once again that I am a DOT employee, although I do not work for the same department as the local agency. I would be happy to recuse myself if anyone believes there is a conflict.
Doesn't appear that anyone does believe that. So thank you, though. With that, we are voting. All in favor of this ordinance, please say aye.
Aye.
Any disapprove? No. This passes. Thank you. We go on to item F. Adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Olsen Brothers Provac LLC for the 2022 Stormwater Catch Basin and Pipe Maintenance Project. Again, Director Dorsey, please.
Yeah, this is my last one. So thank you again, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. The city needs to routinely inspect and maintain catch basins and associated throughout the city. By this resolution, the City Council would authorize the mayor to execute a contract with Olsen Brothers Provac LLC for the 2022 Stormwater Catch Basin and Pipe Maintenance Project. On March 29th, 2022, Public Works staff established a list of qualified contractors from the 2022 MRSC Small Works roster for main category storm drainage, facility construction, repair and maintenance, and subcategory catch basin cleaning, vectoring, jetting, and rodding to perform the 2022 Stormwater Catch Basin and Pipe Maintenance Project. A copy of that list of qualified contractors is attached to Resolution Exhibit A. On April 4th, 2022, and pursuant to Resolution Number 042-20 as amended, which is Section 5 of bid procedures, the city's Public Works Department mailed an invitation to bid for the 2022 Catch Basin and Pipe Maintenance to 5 qualified contractors on the list. One bid was received by the April 18th, 2022, 2 p.m. deadline, at which Olsen Brothers was deemed the presumed responsive and qualified low bidder. The final bid amount is as follows: Olsen Brothers Provac, $57,125.71. On April 19th, the city's public works staff completed the MRSC mandatory bidders responsibility checklist and determined that the Olsen Brothers bid of $57,125.71 applicable tax included was the lowest qualified bid, and the Public Works Department has confirmed that the bidding procedures for public works have been followed.
Anyone care to make motion?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt resolution number 046-22, authorizing the mayor to execute contract number C049-22 with Olsen Brothers Provac LLC for the 2022 Stormwater Catch Basin and Pipe Maintenance Project in the amount of $57,125.71.
Seconded.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, seeing that there's no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, this passes. Moving on to item G, adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Makers Architecture and Urban Design LLP for development of a housing action plan. Director Bond, please.
Yes, thank you. On February 4th, 2022, the city of Port Orchard applied for and successfully received a state-funded grant of $75,000 from the Washington State Department of Commerce under the authority granted by Chapter 39.40 RCW for the development of a housing action plan. The Port Orchard City Council authorized the mayor to execute the Washington State Department of Commerce interagency agreement with the city of Port Orchard through Growth Management Services for the Housing Action Plan Implementation Grant to adopt a housing action plan at the April 12th, 2022 City Council meeting. The city has selected a consultant, Makers Architecture and Urban Design, to develop a housing action plan for the city of Port Orchard. The housing action plan, there's a sentence fragment there. On January 5th, 2022, the city DCD used its consultant roster hosted by MRSC to select a consultant for personal services under a main category of design and planning and a subcategory of community planning, development regulation, codes and zoning, housing and homelessness assessments and planning, and urban design. After reviewing statements of qualification posted on the roster, the city selected Makers Architecture and Urban Design and requested a scope and fee structure for the Housing Action Plan grant. The Housing Action Plan should encourage the construction of affordable housing and market rate housing in a greater variety of housing types and at prices that are more accessible to a greater variety of incomes. The Housing Action Plan will include strategies directed at the for-profit single-family home market and quantify existing and projected housing need for all income levels, analyze population and employment trends, and consider strategies to minimize the displacement of low-income residents and provide for participation and input from community members and stakeholders. The Housing Action Plan will review and evaluate the current housing element adopted pursuant to RCW 3670A070, including an evaluation of success in attaining planned housing types and units, achievement of goals and policies, and the implementation of the schedule of programs and actions, and be incorporated into the city's comprehensive plan as part of the 2024 comprehensive plan periodic update. A contract was negotiated for an amount not to exceed $75,000 through June 2023. The scope provides for a variety of services and the fee structure varies depending on the services provided. The fee schedule is attached to the contract as Exhibit B. Staff recommends approval of a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Makers Architecture and Urban Design as presented.
Councilman Diener.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Makers Architecture and Urban Design to develop a housing action plan consistent with the requirements established in the Washington State Department of Commerce interagency agreement as presented.
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion on this item? No.
Well, just that it can't happen fast enough. And then the measurements of success, I think, that remains to be seen, but that will be very interesting to work with as well.
Any other discussion? Councilman Gicardi.
Just a quick question on the comment or on the contract. The contract calls out Exhibit A, but as you go to Exhibit A, there's really nothing there. And then you go down to Exhibit B, which I guess references kind of a fee schedule, but the fee schedule is listed as a kind of a not really Appendix A, and then it goes down to are we missing some labels here? Just like the references seem to be incorrect.
No, I think the Appendix A is a standard form that gets attached to our contract, and then Exhibits A and B, we just inserted a placeholder, and then the actual scope of work is attached to the back of the contract, as well as the rate structure. And I'm just scrolling.
We don't have that yet.
We do have that, and for some reason, I'm not seeing it here in your packet.
Right. So that's where I was just kind of curious on this is time and materials, and I just would like to see what could be our potential risk for, beyond this, and if that were to occur, what the financial impact to the city would be. It seems like we're missing something in this contract.
Yeah, I was having trouble with attachments when I was sending things to Janine last week when I was working remotely. So I can share my screen real quick and show you. I can show you Exhibit A. The good news about this is it follows exactly our scope of work with the Department of Commerce that we signed for our grant agreement. And so is this showing the proposed scope of work
Yes.
now across?
Yep.
So this was the final scope of work that basically these tables match what is in our Department of Commerce grant in terms of the timing. I think has changed a little bit. They're not starting the project until July 1st, whereas our original contract said April, but we're just now getting under contract here in May. But it was a pretty short document, and then it had the budget at the end of the document showing just under $75,000.
Why do you think this is time and materials versus just lump sum?
Well, I think they're actually going to bill us based on whichever mix of staff is working on this. But I suppose, we went back and forth on which box to check on the contract. And so I'm not totally sure.
I'm just curious about potential overruns and then where that would be paid for.
We can change it to lump sum if that's the comfort level of council.
Is there a not to exceed on this anywhere?
That is a great question. I would suggest that if council wants to approve this tonight, change it to lump sum. And
there was some not to exceed language, but for if the things were applicable to Exhibit B, that's kind of why this whole thing came up. So I would prefer to go to lump sum, just get this done for that body of that amount.
So if you don't mind me interjecting, the time and materials does have a not to exceed number in it, not to exceed $75,000.
But isn't there a what if for Exhibit B unless certain things in Exhibit B arise?
Without written authorization.
Right, but the project could be unfinished, I guess is my point.
That is.
Yeah, it wouldn't exceed 75,000, but we wouldn't have a complete body of work.
Wouldn't have a project.
Sorry, I misunderstood the question.
I'm comfortable with lump sum.
Lump sum,
Lump sum.
lump sum. Do we need to amend the motion then for the lump sum?
I think that would be appropriate.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to offer an amendment to this motion and change from time and materials to lump sum not to exceed, just lump sum of $75,000 for the complete body of work.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. Now back to the original motion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The resolution passes. On to item H. This is item H, adoption of a resolution authorizing the purchase of a body worn camera system for the police department. And that would be Director Brown, Chief Brown.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, Council. In 2021, the city's police department identified the need to equip its police officers with body-worn camera systems. The department formed a staff work group that researched options and eventually identified a body-worn camera system that met the requirements of the city. Pursuant to RCW 39.34.080 and 040, the city is a member of the purchasing cooperative Sourcewell number 26305, formerly known as the National Joint Power Alliance, or NJPA, a Minnesota public agency. Staff reviewed the proposals evaluated and selected by Sourcewell for body-worn camera systems and identified Axon Enterprises, Inc. as an approved vendor through Sourcewell contract number 010720-AXN for supplying equipment, products, or services. On April 25th, 2022, Axon Enterprise, Inc. provided the city a quote for purchase of the body-worn camera system of $59,876.30 plus applicable tax annually for a 5-year contract for a total purchase price of $326,804.94.
Staff reviewed the procurement process by Sourcewell for this contract to confirm the price quoted was consistent with Sourcewell contract number 010720-AXN. Procurement requirements were met by Sourcewell, and staff obtained the necessary documentation regarding procurement. On April 25th, 2022, the city's police department completed the interlocal agreement purchase checklist for Sourcewell. The proposed purchase will initially be financed with monies from the city's criminal justice fund and will require a budget amendment. Subsequent funding will be included in biennial budgets and provided by the general fund. The department is budgeted for 23 commissioned peace officers. The purchase of 25 body-worn cameras is recommended to account for body-worn cameras that may be damaged by use or other factors. As components of the body-worn camera system, this contract includes updated tasers, the 2021 Core Plus operating system, and the dynamic bundle, which includes virtual reality trading and redaction software. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt a resolution authorizing the purchase of 25 body-worn cameras, plus associated hardware, software, and a 5-year maintenance agreement from Axon Enterprises through Sourcewell contract number 010720AXN for a total purchase price of $326,804.94, applicable tax included.
Councilman Clausen,
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the purchase of 25 body-worn cameras plus associated hardware, software, and a 5-year maintenance agreement with Axon Enterprise Incorporated through Sourcewell contract number 010720-AXN for a total purchase price of $326,804.94, applicable tax included.
Second.
Seconded.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? No discussion? Yep, go ahead. Councilman Chicardi.
No, I just wanted to call out that this has been an issue that we've been talking about for a considerable amount of time. And I'd just like to give a shout out of thanks to Chief Brown for navigating this. I think this is just a great win-win for not only our peace officers, but for our community. It'll be nice to move this forward. So congratulations, everyone.
Thank you.
Councilman Rosapepe.
I'd like to second Councilmember Cucciardi's comments, but also several of us on the council have used cameras in our public places, and we've seen the benefits of having camera systems throughout, whether it's public transportation, et cetera. And I think this is a great move for us. And I think it's a great move for our community to be able to see how our police officers respond and the professionalism that they exhibit. So hats off to you, Chief, and to staff for getting this moving forward.
Thank you.
Is there any other? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to iterate what was been previously said, but also to thank Chief Brown for getting ahead of the curve on this, recognizing that this is probably something that's going to be a requirement and getting us ahead of that so that we're not fighting with vendors or having to make forced decisions to meet requirements of law. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate the support.
Is there any further discussion? With that, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. We're moving on to item number I, approval of amendment number 3 to contract number 082-19 with Kitsap Public Facility District for the Community Event Center project. Director Bunn.
Yes, thank you. In 2019, the city was awarded $12 million in funding by the Kitsap Public Facilities District for its Community Event Center project under contract 082-19. The city and its consultant, Rice Fergus Miller, has completed tasks 1 through 3 as provided in the ILA and are currently working on tasks 4 and 5. The city recently approved amendment number 6 to its contract with Rice Fergus Miller for the Community Event Center project. The tasks in amendment 6 exceeded the original amount as funding as shown in amendment 2 of the ILA between the city and KPFD. KPFD has agreed to reallocate funding for the project by shifting funds for construction into the design phase of the contract. In addition, the contract scope language for tasks 4 and 5 are being updated to match the scope of work in accordance with Amendment 6 with Rice Fergus Miller. Staff recommends that the City Council approve Amendment 3 to contract 082-19 with the Kitsap Public Facilities District as presented.
Councilman Diener.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I move to approve amendment number 3 to contract 8219 with Kitsap Public Facilities District.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, with there any discussion? Councilman Chicardi.
So we've talked about this a couple of times, and I think at the last our last meeting, Mayor addressed this issue. And I just want to make sure that just transparency, the fiscal impact, the fiscal impact states that the contract amendment does not have a fiscal impact on the city. But I think it could, because we're just shifting funds from construction back to design. So this could change the scope of it later. Am I accurately reflecting the conversations we've had on this previously?
Yes, and I have to apologize because we were led to believe in our conversations with staff at KPFD that this would be an increase in the total grant amount. And so that's what we moved forward with our contract amendment with the RFM, is that we would be getting more money from KPFD. The board ultimately decided to reallocate for now and said there may be an opportunity for more funding later, but let's get to the point where we're going to construction and figure out how much is needed at that time. So I think it could have a financial impact if we are unable to get additional money from the KPFD.
And that's consistent with our previous conversation. So I think we should at least change perhaps that fiscal impact statement to better reflect what we know today.
Any other discussion? Do we need to do anything differently in the way of an amendment by changing that statement? Or is that just clarification?
I think that's just clarification. The staff report isn't part of the record. It's just the contract amendment that's getting approved.
Okay, great. So is there any other discussion? If not, we'll be voting on this motion. All in favor,
and I
please
just wanted
say
to create
aye.
a framework for this vote that, that this council understands that it could in the future. We don't know. And the KPFD didn't want to go down this road at this point with other, projects that they have going on. But I just want to make sure that we're voting in full transparency, that this is unknown at this point.
Thank you. Anyone else have any concerns or discussion? All right, all in favor then, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, this motion passes. We're moving on to item J. That's approval of a 2-day use of parking lot number 4 for Fathoms of Fun Pirates Rendezvous. Ms. Wallace.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Staff received a special event application for a Fathoms of Fun Pirate Rendezvous Craft and Vendor Show scheduled for Sunday, May 29th and Monday, May 30th, 2022. The application states the following, that it is a Fathoms of Fun Pirate Rendezvous Vendor Fair, Sunday, May 29th through Monday, May 30th. Setup starts May 29th at 6 a.m. and is open to the public between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. And then on May 30th, it will open to the public at 10 a.m. and close at 4 p.m. with the projected cleanup time to be completed by 6 p.m. It's located downtown Port Orchard, city-owned parking lot number 4, which is behind Peninsula Feed. The required notice pursuant to Port Orchard Municipal Code 5.96.050 subsection 3, allowing citizens to provide written comments regarding how allowing the special event would impact their property, business, or quality of life, has been published. And as of today, the city has received no concerns regarding this event taking place. Staff and outside agencies have reviewed the application and are still working towards ensuring safety measures are in place. Pursuant to Port Orchard Municipal Code 5.94.080 subsection 1, which was recently amended by the City Council, that staff should bring forward the special event application to the City Council for their approval when the event requires using all or a portion of lots 3 and 4, commonly known as the waterfront parking, for 2 or more consecutive days. Since this event is 2 consecutive days, staff is asking for council to approve it, assuming that they meet all of the required and necessary public safety provisions.
Councilman Clausen.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt the 2-day use of parking lot number 4 for the Fathoms of Fun Pirates Rendezvous event scheduled for Sunday, May 29th to Monday, May 30th as presented.
I'll
Second.
second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing that there's no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. On to item K, approval of road closures for a special event, Fathoms of Fun Grand Parade. Ms. Wallace?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. So again, city staff received two special event applications for the Fathoms of Fun for the 53rd Annual Grand Parade and a 2-day summer festival that is a craft and vendor show scheduled for Saturday, June 25th and Sunday, June 26th, 2022. It is again a parade and a 2-day craft fair festival. Saturday, June 25th and Sunday, June 26th. The parade will be June 25th from 6 p.m. until 7:45 p.m. The vendor fair will start set up on June 25th at 6 a.m. and will be open to the public between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And June 26th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the expected cleanup time for that vendor fair is 6 p.m. It is located downtown Port Orchard. Road closures is Port Orchard Boulevard from 1:45 to 7:30 p.m. Bay Street South, State Route 166 from Port Orchard Boulevard through Bethel Road, approximately 5:30 p.m. to 7:45 p.m. Port Orchard Public Boat Launch from 5:30 to 7:45 p.m. on the Water Street and parking lot area behind Peninsula Feed, which is parking lot number 4. Again, this city required notice pursuant to Port Orchard Municipal Code 5.96.050, subsection 3, allows for citizens to provide written comments regarding how this special event will impact their property, business, or quality of life. Has been published, and to date, the city has received no concerns regarding both of these events taking place. Staff and outside agencies have reviewed the application and are working towards ensuring public safety measures are in place. Pursuant to Port Orchard Municipal Code 5.94.050, subsection 4, which again was recently amended by City Council, staff shall bring forward a special event application for approval when the event requires a street closure and or highway. In addition, Port Orchard Municipal Code 5.94.080, subsection 1, staff shall bring forward the special event application to the City Council when requiring use of all or portion of city lots 3 and 4, commonly known as the waterfront parking lot, for 2 or more consecutive days. With that, staff supports the application upon both events meeting the required necessary public safety and traffic control provisions.
Councilman Clausen?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I move to approve the road closure for the Fathoms of Fun Festival 53rd Annual Grand Parade event scheduled for Saturday, June 25th, 2022, as presented, as well as approving the use of Lot 4 for the 2-day vendor show to be held June 25th and June 26th, 2022.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Rosepepe.
No, that was inadvertent. Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
Oh, you're popping around on my screen here. Any other discussion? Okay, with that, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The approval passes. We're on to item L. Approval of the April 19th, 2022 work study session meeting minutes. Okay, so is there a motion?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I move to approve the council meeting minutes of the study session for April 19th, 2022.
Second.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I'll be voting on this even though I was absent. I did watch the movie.
Watch the movie?
Show. Sorry.
Did you eat popcorn while you were doing that?
I actually did.
I believe it. All right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? No. This approval passes. We're on to discussion items. No action to be taken tonight, but we're continuing the discussion of Veterans Park. Do we have any staff that's going to be reporting on this?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I wanted to report that the code enforcement officer is currently out of town. So a robust report will be provided next time, along with photos showing the recent successful cleanup.
I think most of us did see the email, and it's amazing. So I can't wait to hear the report, but what great results. And so thank you everyone who has been working towards such a successful ending to this. We just hope we can keep it cleaned up, right? So onward to reports of council committees. Economic Development and Tourism, please.
Yeah, that would be me, and we canceled that meeting due to staff shortage and not having a whole lot of information to discuss.
Okay.
Rescheduled for June, the second.
June
June
2nd. Okay, thank you very much.
Not June 2nd, second Tuesday of June.
Oh, second Tuesday of June. Okay, great.
So,
Thank you. Utilities, we had that just before this meeting, and actually I'm going to report at another time as well. So our next council meeting, I'll have a report on that. Finance Committee, May 17th.
We've reported last time, and our next meeting is scheduled for the 17th.
Thank you. Transportation.
There was a report at the last meeting, and the next meeting will be before the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Festival of Chimes and Lights, May 16th is our next meeting. Land use.
I think there was a report after the last land use committee meeting that I was not at, but
Okay, and the next meeting is May 18th.
May 18th. Yeah.
There we go. Lodging tax advisory. I don't think you've met, and there doesn't seem to be anything.
not till fall, late summer.
Great, thank you. Sewer advisory, we will be meeting May 18th at 6:30 p.m. Any outside agencies to report tonight? Okay, I think we're moving on to not the report of the mayor, because he'll be back next time, but report of department heads. Okay, do we have any department heads? Let's see. Mr. Bond.
Nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Dorsey.
To report.
Nothing to report? You're sort of quiet. Yes, okay. Let's see. Ms. Robertson?
Nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Wallace?
I don't have anything to report either.
Okay. Mr. Crocker?
Nothing to report.
Okay, Chief Brown?
For once, I have nothing. We're just very appreciative that council approved the body cameras, and we'll work on some other things in the coming month. So thank you.
Great. Any other staff to report anything? Then we're going to move on to our second set of citizens' comments. Ms. Wallace, is there anyone who cares to comment?
I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Okay, great. There is no executive session tonight. Is there any council good of the order to report?
Second comment
Go
period? Yep. Second comment period?
We just passed it. There were
Oh.
no citizens wanting to comment.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Rosepepe.
I'm going to take a minute, and I appreciate the council's indulgence. Last week, I had the opportunity to spend about a day in my old hometown, and the only reason I bring it up was it started out as a town of about 20,000 when I was growing up, and in the last 30, well, I guess almost 50 years, it's become a town of 75,000. So a lot of growth. And the reason I bring this up is the city council and several of the mayors, one of who I went to school with, had the foresight to look at downtown and development and try to move forward, whether both with parks and with a vibrant downtown. They have a lot of problems, some that we're starting to see, but they had the foresight to keep things moving forward and vibrant. So when we have these discussions with our parks and amenities and also about the pathway, keep looking forward. John, you may be here yet in the next 30 years, hopefully, God bless, on the council. And so let's keep pushing forward and pushing the envelope and thinking about what our town can look like in 20 and 30 years on this, because it was great to see that this, the city where I grew up, it is moving forward and as vibrant as growth happens, because it is inevitable that growth will come to Port Orchard. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you. And actually, I was also just in my hometown, and a large paper mill closed down. So over 900 people lost jobs, and that town has been going through significant challenges. However, their mayor and council also has been working on waterfront and improvements, and they have, I think, over 50 miles of pathways just in the immediate area, and you can go from one area to another, and it's just beautiful. So I was thinking the same thing. So thank you, Councilman Rosa Pepe, for saying that, because a long-range planning is so important, and it does provide for a better future. So with that, are there any other comments? Any other discussion? Then our meeting is adjourned at 8:06 p.m. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye,
Night,
everybody.
everyone.
Night, everybody.